Hello everyone. So today we will start a new chapter, that is chapter number 7, Adaptations in Plants. Okay. So before we start to the different types of adaptations in plants, first of all we will give an introduction about what is adaptation. Okay. The first topic which is given in your book is what is adaptation. Now, adaptation is actually the physical feature, or we can say that the behavior of an organism that helps an organism survive in its environment. Okay, plants and animals, they live in different places. They live in cold places as well as hot and dry places. Okay, they also live in rivers. Some of the animals, they live in rivers, they live in lakes, salty water of the oceans, etc. Now in this lesson we will talk about plant adaptations. Okay, now both the plants and animals, they live in different environment. Just now I have discussed that many plants and animals, they live in cold places, some live in hot places, dry places. So how they are surviving in those environment? With the help of adaptations. They have adaptations which is suitable to the conditions of that place. Now for example, in your book it is given fish. How fish, they survive in aquatic region? Because they have gills. They have gills to breathe air which is dissolved in the air. Then we have cactus plants which can survive in dry desert. How they are surviving in the dry desert? Because they can store water in their stems. That's why they can survive in the desert areas. Okay, because they are adapted to the environment in which they are living. Okay, this is called as adaptations. Now based on the type of adaptations, plants are divided into terrestrial plants and aquatic plants. In this chapter we will only study the adaptations in plants. Okay, so terrestrial, first comes your terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants are those plants that grow on land. Plants, there are different types of terrestrial plants. First, plants that are in deserts, okay, like cactus, then mesquite bush. They grow in desert areas, or we can say that they grow in dry environment. The roots of the desert plants are adapted to take in whatever water is available in the soil. Okay, plants like cactus, they have roots that spread just under the surface of the soil. The mesquite bush has roots that can move 20 meter in search of water. The roots of the mesquite bush, it can grow down to more than 20 meter in search of water. And the leaves of the cactus plants are like spines, sharp spines. These spines prevents the loss of water from the leaves of the cactus. Okay, and the stem of the cactus makes food. And when there is no rain, the cactus uses the water in its stem. Okay, now some plants which survive in the hilly areas like Uttaranchal, Himachal Pradesh, Kashmir, these places are cold in winters. Some areas also experience snowfall. The trees that grows have to survive the cold and snow. Now the plants which are growing in the hilly areas are usually tall and straight. Okay, now the plants that grow in the cold places, they do not bear flowers. Okay, instead they have cones. Okay, as you can see in this picture, they have cones. And that's why they are called as conifers. Okay, the plants which grow in the hilly areas, they are called as conifers. Now the cones have seeds. These cones, they have seeds in them, and conifers have needle-like leaves. The leaves of the conifers are like needle-shaped, and they are very tough and can survive the cold and snow. The plants which are present in the hilly areas have a sloping shape that makes the snow fall off them easily. Some trees like pine, cedar, spruce and conifers, they do not shed all their leaves at the same time, and so they look green throughout the year. So they are called as evergreen trees. Some of the trees are present which do not shed their leaves every time. They wait for the season, and again what they do, the trees look green throughout the year. So since they look green, they are called as evergreen trees. They do not shed their leaves at the same time. Okay, now some of the plants like oak, then maple, birch, these trees, they shed all their leaves during winter to protect themselves from the cold. This is the structure of oak plant. and it sheds all its leaf during the winter. And new leaves grow during the summer or spring, and so they are called as deciduous trees. Okay. Now, plants which are present in the plains, trees like banyan, peepal, mango, which are present in the warmer climate of the plain. Plants like teak, tamarind, rubber, tea, coffee grows well in this type of climate where there is heavy rainfall. Okay, there are some pictures given of coffee plant. Then you have mango plant, banyan tree. They all grows in plains where there is heavy rainfall. Okay. Now, plants which are present in the marshy places, plants like mangrove trees grows in marshy or swampy place. Marshy place means those places that have clay soil and plenty of water, or the place which is very moist. The roots of the mangrove trees, they grow above the soil. As the roots, they do not get air as water covers the soil, and so the roots of these mangrove trees, they are called as breathing roots. Okay. Then we have aquatic plants. Aquatic plants are those plants that grow in water. Now, there are three types of aquatic plants. First is the floating plants, then we have fixed plants, and then we have underwater plants. Okay. Now, floating plants like for example, say duckweed, as you can see in this picture, duckweed. Then we have water lettuce, water hyacinth. The picture of water hyacinth is not given here, so they float freely on top of the water. Okay, the bodies, why they float? Because the bodies are so light and have empty spaces filled with air. This makes the plants float on water. Okay, then we have fixed plants. Fixed plants like water lily, lotus, they're fixed plants because the roots of the plant are fixed to the bottom of the ponds and lakes, and they have plate-like leaves that float on the surface of the water. The stems of these plants are hollow, light and flexible. They bend with the flow of water and make sure that the leaves are always above water, whatever the level of water rises or falls in the water body. Okay, then we have underwater plants. What are underwater plants? Plants like hydrilla, tape grass, like completely underwater. They are completely underwater. They are also called as submerged plants. They have narrow, thin leaves with no stomata. The plants absorb the carbon dioxide given out by the animal living in the water. And the stems are also very flexible and have air spaces, and the plants always breathe through their body surface. Okay, so they are called as underwater plants. For example, hydrilla. Then we will come to the insectivorous plants. Insectivorous plants like Venus flytrap, as you can see in this picture. Venus flytrap, pitcher plant. Now, Venus flytrap is an insectivorous plant. How it became insectivorous plants? According to the structure, the Venus flytrap, the leaves of the Venus flytrap are folded into halves. Okay, and each half is called as lobe. Okay, we can call it as lobe. Okay, now the Venus flytrap. The Venus flytrap's leaves are hinged. Hinged means they can even open and shut. Inside the leaves are short, firm hair-like structure, but they are not like the hair on your head. These hairs acts like sensors, letting the plant know when an insect or small animal is in the leaf. And when an insect sits on the leaf, the two halves of the leaves, they close shut, and the trapped insect is then digested, as you can see in this picture. The insect sits on that leaf, and when the plant recognizes it with the help of hairs inside, they will close the leaves, okay, and they will trap the insect and digest the insect. Okay, then we have pitcher plant. Pitcher plant is like a container. As you can see here, it is like a container, and they have lids at the top of the mouth. The nectar, they always produce, this kinds of plants, they always produce nectar. The nectar attracts insects, and when an insect lands on the wall, it falls down into the liquid, and the insect cannot get out of the container because the walls are smooth and slippery. Okay, and the walls have hairs which are pointing downwards, and so when an insect falls on the container, it is trapped and digested. Okay, so this is how pitcher plant works, and inside this container we have nectar. Okay, when an insect come, it gets inside to take the nectar, and at the same time the lid gets closed, and then the plant takes the nutrition from the insect. Okay, this is how a pitcher plant works. Then we have fungi. The thing that grows on the slice of the bread is called as mold. Okay, now mold is an example of fungi. Fungi are not plants. They are not plants, neither animals. They belong to a group of their own. They have their own group. Okay, and one of the example of fungi is mold. Mold is a living thing, and it does not have chlorophyll. It cannot produce its own food, so they are dependent on other organisms for its food, and it gets its food from the substance on which it grows. For example, say in this bread, in this piece of bread. Okay, now in this activity, see, in this activity, page number 53. In this activity, what it is said that we can sprinkle a little water on a slice of bread and keep the slice aside for a few days. You can observe that something growing on the slice of bread. Use a magnifying lens to see what it is. So when we will sprinkle some water on a piece of bread, and if we keep it for a few days, then what we will see that some organisms, black colored organisms, are growing on the bread, on a piece of bread. These are actually mold. Okay, if you want to take a magnifying glass and if you want to see, you will see that molds are growing on the bread. Okay, so this is mold. The mold is getting nutrition from the bread. Okay, another example of fungi is mushroom, as you can see in this picture. Mushrooms, they are also fungi. These mushrooms, we can see mostly in moist areas. Okay, in our homes also sometimes we can see mushrooms. They are growing on the tree barks or sometimes in the moist areas. So this is one of the example of fungi. Okay, now fungi or mushrooms, they get their food from plant or animal matter. Okay, so this was all about chapter number 7. Okay, so you read the question and answers which are given, which are shared in your school app. Question and answers, then you have exercises. You read all those and read the chapter. Chapter reading is very important. If you read the chapter, you can understand very well. Okay, so that's all.